as I see the Harvey Weinstein stories being pushed on the front stage of the news, I honestly find myself not being able to care less. And it's not that I don't care about anybody's being raped, but this is not what the story is. As a matter of fact, like I'm really confused as to what the Harvey Weinstein story is. So far, from what I was able to gather, there were mainly reports of sexual misconduct, whatever that means, and it can be interpreted in such a broad way. Yes, there were some allegations of past rape, but we're talking about 15 or 20 years ago. So, if there were, I mean, it's not proven, and it's very difficult to prove it. And in a scenario like this one seems to be, which is a character assassination of a powerful mogul, it's extremely doubtful too. When somebody comes out 20 years later and says he raped me, how do we know it was not consensual? How do we know that? So if it ever was a problem for that person, I think like they would have done themselves and everybody's a favor if they came out at the time. So far we know what can be verified is that is having sexual misconduct, which is cornering people and is inviting them to observe him take a shower. So that's a weird sexual fantasy, but I wouldn't say that in that type of field, the show business field, is not too much of a ritual to go through if it's gonna help out your career. And many of them went through much worse. Behind the Harvey Weinstein story, of course, there are more serious things happening in Hollywood. There are more serious situations, and most likely in some cases rape. But I do not see the Harvey Weinstein story could be a vehicle right now. It could be the real Weinstein gate that is gonna open the flow of stories about what is really going on behind Hollywood doors. But nobody's really coming out, with the other names, with the more serious stories. They're not using that opportunity to say, yes, this is going on, and that person or that person actually raped me, or there is no name. So we're still like protecting. It's still whatever happens in Hollywood stays in Hollywood. So if they're gonna just like lash out on a guy who the powers to be have decided to put on the ground for whatever reason, it doesn't give much credit to anybody, in my opinion. They should they should use, if there was some authenticity in the testimonies, I would say they should use that opportunity in order to truly expose whatever else is going on. So to me, the Weinstein story is not the tip of the iceberg of something. It might be a tip of an iceberg, but it's not an iceberg we're gonna get to uncover, in my opinion. I think like we're facing a character assassination for whatever reason, and most likely, it's to cover up the Las Vegas shooting events, because of course that story doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And did you notice how there is always some type of celebrity scandal coming up every time like people are starting to question too much? It's just like always some type of synchronicity going on right there. So the Weinstein story, in my opinion, is not going anywhere, except, like some said, to set a standard by which an attack on Donald Trump is gonna be perpetrated. Meaning that if we all get offended and scandalized by the Weinstein story, then we cannot play the double standard once maybe some subsequent tapes or testimonies come out about Donald Trump, which then that's a very plausible case scenario. one of the only ones for which I see a reason even for this Weinstein character assassination. So yeah, it plays, most likely it plays those two squares. It plays on the level of covering and distracting the news from the Las Vegas shooting, which they're not able to. They're really not able to sell that narrative, you know. As a matter of fact, neither is Alex Jones able to sell me the narrative he's trying to sell, because he's going with his own agenda, with apparently documented sources of linking the guy to ISIS. I mean, come on now, yeah, like this is getting like a joke, you know. And I do not believe that Donald Trump is gonna do anything about it. Because in one of his recent speeches, his whole take on the situation was that there was something wrong with the guy. So he's perpetrating the official narrative, which really is disappointing. So now the Weinstein story, to get back to this, it's yes, it's a distraction. It's we're spinning from the real news, and now we're supposed to care about the sexual misconduct of an Hollywood mogul. It's like everybody knows it's going on. It doesn't make it more normal, but what I'm saying is, like, there's on the surface of things no apparent reason to make more noise than what it is making. I don't know why it's not they decided to expose it now, and that's an interesting question, because I see a lot of people asking that question: why are they exposing this now? And to me, um, it's a very positive thing, because we're not just buying things at face value anymore. We are, you know, a lot of people are questioning the motives behind, and even though, like, we're still confused as to the motives, the fact is that the brains and the independent thinking are at work and trying to figure out, and not just buying what we're being sold, which is just a Hollywood scandal. And concerning those sexual misconducts, quote unquote, of course, because it can be so many things, I would. It's not only prevalent to Hollywood. I'm gonna tell you, like, for having been in many fields and you know, work structures, I can tell you it's going on everywhere. It's just that it is not as advertised. It never becomes whole-scale news, because you know, who gives a fuck, right? But in any type of work structure where there is a hierarchy of power, there are sex stories, you know, sex stories that 3, 4, 5 years later, a person can decide that the sexual act that she performed or he performed for a career advancement was not consensual, but was coercion. I don't know how you get coerced into sex, you know, except if your life is at stake. I don't know how you get coerced into sex you're not willing to perform in the moment. So I am. That's just my opinion on on this. So the Weinstein story, big distraction, and let's see where it leads. Let's see if it leads somewhere really further, or if we're gonna just stay at the surface of things, which is just a distraction from the Las Vegas shootings.